What's up, Thrashers, and welcome back once again to the Thrash Maniac 99 YouTube channel. And I am back with yet another album review for you guys. And today I'm talking about an underground release to kick off the weekend of May 3rd, and that is Crawl with Altar of Disgust. This came out on May 3rd, and actually, now I remember, this came out on Transcending Obscurity Records. And this is their second album overall, and of course, this is some Swedish death metal, although I will say there's probably more to this than just Swedish death metal, and I'll talk more about it as we get into the album. So, of course, when you think of Swedish death metal, what's the first thing you think of? That's right, Boss HM2 tone. And that's pretty much all over this entire album, and on top of that, there's also with the band name Crawl, I assume named after the song Crawl by Entombed. I wouldn't be shocked if that were the case. But yeah, so like I said, Swedish death metal, but I feel like there's some more to it, excuse me, than just that. Like the opening track, Undead Crypts, yeah, it's very much Swedish death metal, but dare I say there's a little bit of a crust punk vibe going on in the beginning, and then right away when the vocals come in, as soon as I heard the vocals, I immediately thought, am I hearing Barney Greenway from Napalm Death right now? Because the vocalist sounds very much like Barney Greenway from Napalm Death, and I love Barney Greenway from Napalm Death, so that's not a bad thing at all. And then as the song goes on into this more like crusty, thrashy Swedish death metal style, then you get some like slow triplet chugs, and then it gets thrashy again. Even a galloping riff and rhythm with a simple lead melody before it ends with this more triplet swing to it. And that's pretty much kind of a thing with this album. These guys like to play all sorts of different styles within their Swedish death metal sound. Like if I were to say the other styles you're getting on here, crust punk, grindcore, and thrash metal mixed in with their brand of Swedish death metal. Like, I would say in terms of, like, whenever it gets into the more grindy territory, it's almost on every track for the most part. Like, Throne of Molten Bones, Knives, not Ethereal Depths, Enslaved in Filth, Vision of Burning Apparitions, and also, I would say, the closing track, Buried Lust, all have apparent grindcore influence, and I mean like that Napalm Death style of grind. But as far as whenever it gets into the more crust punk territory, that's a little more rare on this album. Like, that mostly comes up in the opening track, Undead Crypts, Throne of Molten Bones, and Curse of the Morbid. Those would be the primary songs that has that more almost crust punk vibe going on. There's even a lot of these tracks incorporate a good amount of groove to it. Like Knives, which was only a little over 2 minutes, starts off with a more hardcore groove before it gets thrashy and then grindy and even blast beats with gang vocals. And blast beats are more or less sporadic on this album in terms of like when they show up. You get blasts at the beginning of Throne of Molten Bones with low-end tremolos that almost sound like Bloodbath a little bit. But then I would say at the beginning of Curse of the Morbid, you get blasts and tremolos with a touch of melody. And this track features Chris Monroy from Skeletal Remains on guest vocals. And I like how with this song in particular, it's like I forget the main vocalist's name on this album, who sounds like Barney Greenway, but it seems like during this track when he's doing vocals, it's a little more on the crusty grindcore side, but when Chris's vocals come in, the music switches up to being a little more thrash oriented. There's even some black metal moments towards the end with the tremolos and the blasts, as well as a double time rhythm to kind of add some more songwriting variety on this track. So it's like this track kind of covers almost all of the basis of this entire album. But Ethereal Depths, like I said, more groove-oriented, but it's got more of those open string chugs going on, some tremolos, and dare I say it's a little more atmospheric before it ends on a thrashy note. And then Enslaved in Filth, like I said, it's pretty much, for the most part, excuse me, more or less grind inspired with the riffs, the blasts, and the tremolos. You do get some badass triplet chugs. Like the triplet chugs when they pop up are really cool. Like in Undead Crypts, Enslaved in Filth, Vision of Burning Apparitions, Until They Crawl. Like those songs have some really cool triplet chugs. And also in Enslaved in Filth, there's like a 3/4 time signature chug and groove, which was pretty cool. Vision of Burning Apparitions. This one has a little more classic metal inspired riffs and rhythms in the beginning, but played through this crusty, nasty filter before you get more blast, grindiness, some dissonance pop up, and more of those triplet swings and chugs. Until They Crawl, it's more of a galloping chug with low-end tremolos and thrashy rhythms, but with a lead melody, and lead melodies only happen on 2 tracks. And even some like squeals and a notable nasty bass line. But when this album gets into breakdowns like in Throne of Molten Bones and Until They Crawl, they're really cool. Into sordid riffs, groovy with a tremolo riff, kind of like Gatecreeper a little bit, but then it gets into some black metal territory with the blast beats, the vocals, and the tremolo riffs, before it ends on a more punky Napalm Death D-beat stomp. And then Buried Lust samples and grind and blasts and tremolos, but it kind of ends rather anticlimactically with just samples and nothing else for like the last minute, which I thought was kind of a waste. And that was one of the complaints I had about this album, was just how that track ended, as well as the track Where No Light Escapes, which was a little over 2 minutes. It was more of an interlude to lead into Enslaved in Filth, which was the shortest track of the album at under 2 minutes. So it's like, honestly, I would have just cut Where No Light Escapes out and that ending to Buried Lust out and moved Buried Lust to like the middle of the album. And I think it would have made this album stronger. And it's short. It's only a little over 30 minutes long, but I feel like if they took that interlude out and cut out the ending of Buried Lust, you're looking at about 27 minutes or so of music. But overall, this is a pretty damn good album. I am going to give this one a 3.5. It's very energetic. There may not be like a lot of great transitions. Like I will say another complaint, the transitions were a little too abrupt. But I do like how the album flows and how all the songs are connected. But it's energetic, it's fun. If you like Entombed, Dismember, Napalm Death, and dare I say even like Extreme Noise Terror, check this out. But of course, that's just my opinion. What did you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching. Comment, share, subscribe, all that stuff. Keep your horns high and your dreams wet.